Hello, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I just recently concluded a three-way comparison between the new Tamron 15-30 VC along with the Canon 16-35 f4 LIS, and then just as a third comparison point, I threw in the older Canon 16-35 f2.L, and this is the Mark II of that lens. The other two lenses I had previously reviewed, but I had never spent any time with this particular lens before, having previously owned the 17-40 f4L lens instead. And so I thought that I would do a quick video review of this older lens just to give you a little bit of feedback over what I found, directly comparing it to some of the newer competitors. And so first of all, let's just take a quick look at the overall dimensions and build of this lens. This lens, it was released back in 2007, and so it's now roughly about 8 years old, and it is about 4.39 inches long and weighs in at 635 grams, and so that makes it just a hair heavier than the new 16-35 f4L. It has an 82 millimeter front filter thread, and while that was a little bit more of an issue back when it was released in 2007, there's been a trend towards larger front elements since that point, and so the 82 millimeter front filter thread is no longer a big deal. It has become a common filter thread size that is shared with a number of other lenses. This copy has Canon's new center pinch cap, which is a nice addition, but unfortunately it still has that old lens hood design, which it's not only very shallow, it also is really, really wide. And so it means that if you're going to bring it along, it often takes up a lot of additional room in your bag. It doesn't pack particularly well. And so if you're anything like me, with the 17-40 f4L, this tended to stay home more often than it came. But beyond that one negative, there's really nothing else to complain about in the build. In fact, when I compared these three lenses, I actually found that I preferred the handling of this lens the most of them. One of those being is that the zoom ring here is really, really smooth. It just glides along with a minimum of resistance. To me, it kind of feels like what an internally zooming lens should feel like. With that just minimal amount of resistance, it reminds me of some of Canon's 70-200 variants. And so that's very nice. The focus ring, it works fine as well. This lens is able to focus down quite close to 0.28 of a meter. And that produces a maximum magnification of about 0.22 times. And so a very useful figure, to be sure, that puts it right dead in the center of the pack with these newer variants. Now, one thing that does become clear as you compare it with some of these, brand new optically superior lenses is that when it comes to absolute sharpness, resolution, contrast, even flare resistance, this lens is not up to its newer peers. And those shortcomings do become clear when direct head-to-head comparison. It's certainly not as sharp out into the corners. The corners, extreme corners of this lens are quite a bit softer, and it can compete reasonably well in the middle, but it's still not as good. And overall, the contrast is not as noticeable as the others. There's a little bit more of a softer feel to images that come out of it. But when you stop the lens down to more traditional landscape apertures, around f8 to f11, some of these differences are minimized. The other two lenses are still a bit better, but this lens, it does a very competent job at that point. And but there are some things where this lens actually does better, and one of those, as I've noted, I prefer the handling, but also when I did a direct test of the bokeh production of this lens, compared to the other two, I found that it actually produced by far the best looking bokeh highlights and a really, really nice soft and round highlights. And I think that, as happens with some lenses, it's been my experience that some lenses, they aren't as sharp and they don't have as much contrast, but they kind of make up for it in their out of focus drawing. And for some people, they will find that less contrasty look is actually benefit for them and suits their kind of artistic style. And so my opinion is that this lens is not as good an option as the other two when it comes to landscape performance. And if you want to shoot really, really sharp, wide open, even event type images, then the new Tamron is probably a better bet. But if your photography style shoots more towards doing perhaps portraiture or event photography, and your processing style tends towards a lower contrast, a little more dreamy artistic look, then this lens, and I'm not trying to indicate that this is like a dreamy f1.4 aperture prime lens like some of them. It's not that, but it's more towards that direction than compared to the new 16 to 35 f4L IS. And so I would say that it's not as good in that regard when it comes to landscapes, but it may actually be a better choice for some of you that don't really shoot landscapes and prefer to shoot event or portrait photography. Or if you occasionally shoot landscapes, you're going to be stopping the lens down anyway, and some of those deficiencies you can also make up in post-processing if that is your inclination. One thing about this lens, despite it being a bit older, is the fact that it is a proven performer. And I've seen a number of staggeringly good images that have been taken with this lens. It's been a staple not only for landscape photographers, but it's also been a staple for photojournalists, event photographers, and so it is a proven performer in that aspect. And one other reason why you might buy this compared to, say, the new Tamron is that some of you prefer a first-party lens and first-party support, and you're not a big fan of using third-party lenses. Well, if you want a large aperture, wide-angle lens that is a Canon, this is your choice right here, other than some of the primes. But this is a flexible tool that has been proven over the years. And so while it's a little more dated, and unfortunately it's also a little bit more expensive, it retails for around $1,699 compared to $1,199 for the other two. But at the same time, this is a lens that has proven itself over the past 8 years as an excellent performer. I'm Dustin Abbott. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Have a great day.